Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast. This is episode number 18. I am your host, Dan, joined, as always, by Rob.
Alan, 18. It's like the podcast is an adult.
We have reached adulthood, yes. Yes. In time for the celebrations of the new year as well. We've got our usual topics coming up, but just a quick reminder to check out the description below for all of our social media information. And you'll find time codes down there in case you don't want to listen to us discuss spell a week or monster week and you want to jump to our final topic or vice versa. But we're not going to faff around too much.
No.
We usually do news. I have not been fond of doing news since we've gone to more of a pre-recorded thing because by the time the podcast comes out, it's outdated news.
It is, yeah.
So we're a bit behind. So I'm going to skip that so it allows a bit more time for our final discussion topic. And we'll jump straight into our usuals, which of course, as I said, spell of the week. Rob has a spell, and monster of the week, which is what I bring, and then our final topic, we're going to be covering burnout, DM burnout.
Yeah, not the racing game.
Not the racing games. No, I have some fun memories of I think Burnout 3.
I know Paradise was the only one I've played, and I just loved that you could do like a crash thingy comboing.
Yes, that was always a thing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. But yes, let's move into our first topic. But before we do, actually, we do need to make sure that you are subscribing and liking this video. Hey, make sure you click that subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon to get notifications. And we are going to do our usual roll off to choose who goes first, or to choose the person that chooses who goes first. Convoluted way that we do it. But I'm going to roll
Yeah.
yellow dice today.
Bringing yellow back. Do you know, it's funny, I think I'm actually starting to reach the end of my dice.
I reached the end a long time ago, like 5
Yeah, I think
episodes
I've
in.
got like 6 or 7 dice sets on you. But
I've
yeah,
got 1, 2.
this is mine. Pretty
Yeah.
sure I've used that one before. It's one of my favourite sets.
Mhm.
Slightly harder edges, nice colours, like a kind of pale green
Yeah.
and a black.
All right, this is roll.
Let's roll. Ooh.
Jesus Christ. Okay, well, I've had that number before too.
What did you get?
Got a 10.
That's beat me.
Oh, it beat you. Wow, that
I
is.
gave my dice some good praise and it gave me a 4.
All right, well,
Back
I'm
from
going to
Tuesday.
maintain the 3-week streak, and we'll start with monster.
Monster it is.
I don't know if it's a 4-week streak, but we're continuing it to talk about monster first. Plain and simple. Monster of the week this week, produced or provided to you by yours truly. I'm going to be talking about Eladrin. Eladrin is actually 4 monsters, but they're so very similar that I'm going to talk about them in one group. The 4 divisions, the 4 sections, the 4 sub-races of the Eladrin are based on the seasons of the year. So your spring, your summer, your autumn, and your winter. Each of them being kind of having, I don't want to say having powers that are based on that, because some of them don't really, but we'll go into it a little bit. But for those who don't know what an Eladrin is a type of elf, basically. They are typically the Fey elves. Now, if you were to look it up in the very extended lore of Eladrin on, say, go to the Forgotten Realms wiki or something like that, there's different types of Eladrin. I'm just going to keep it simple. These are the elves that live in the Feywild, and ergo are
Yes.
become infused with the power of the Feywild, or essentially natives there. Share some ancestry with the elves of the material plane. They across the board, as far as I'm aware, all have the same armor class and
Yep.
the same hit points. So there's nothing really that stat stuff doesn't change. What you're usually seeing the variations between them starts with your skills.
Yeah. They're like themed, aren't they, really?
Yeah. Um, so I'll do it in alphabetical order. So they got the Autumn Eladrin, right? So the Autumn Eladrin, like it,
Alphabetical.
yeah.
Do it in season order. Come on.
What season's the first season?
Spring.
Is it?
Start of the year. It's the New Year episode. Come on. Start of the year to the end of the
Well,
year.
the start of the year is actually still winter.
We'll get cancelled.
But okay.
All right. Do your alphabetical then.
Don't have to get started first. I know we'll do spring for Rob. We'll do spring. So spring, they're typically the greener coloured ones when you look at the art. In the art, you'll have seen all four of them on the screen. These are the greeny coloured ones. These are Eladrin where they are full of joy and they love to sing songs and laugh and have and just enjoy themselves. Almost the more typical of your sort of chaotic good
Yeah.
Fae, really. Um, they like their cousins or their well, technically, a lot of the way it works is the season they represent really depends upon their mood.
Yeah.
So, if they're in a spring mood, this is how they are. But like each mood, each phrase, they have a presence. This one's called the joy presence, and I believe it is pretty much the same as the others are in that it is a charm ability.
Okay.
Like there's one that's not, there's one that's frightened. That is a summer Eladrin, if I'm not mistaken. But the rest of them are charms. Yes, these are pretty much probably the most typical ones if you want to think about the way in the way that they are Fey.
Yeah.
They come with some magic, some typical weapon attacks. So they've got his sword and it's got his longbow. It has its resistances that you get expect from that sort of Fey ancestry, but it's called obviously magic resistance as a monster.
Yeah. Oh, psychic resistance as well.
They
Interesting.
do have psychic resistance too, yeah. Um, and the spells that they get, because the spells are really the things that also give them a bit of variety, is at will they can do Tasha's Hideous Laughter.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Major Image, which is your upgraded version of Minor Illusion,
Yes.
and one spell we've talked about before, which is Suggestion, and they can do Major Image and Suggestion once a day each. Unlike the others, they have the bonus action of Phase Step, which if you've either played an Eladrin or you've ever got the feat that gives you the Fey something or other. But it gives you the ability to Misty Step, and it's essentially what it is. It's Fey Step
Ah,
is
fair touch. Yeah.
Fey Touch. That's the one. Yes. That's what Fey Step is. It's an ability to teleport.
A lot of the even not the Eladrins, like a lot of the elf-themed races have got some sort of Misty Step spin-off. I find these
Mm-hmm.
days. I think the Kalishtar have got it. I think the
Kashtar Dream People, right?
yeah, they're the Dream Elves, and there's the what are the Raven Queens ones called?
Shadakai.
Shadowkai, I think they've got it. And it always does something slightly different. It's a Misty Step and an effect. And I remember the
Mm-hmm.
Shadowkai one, I think, gives you resistance to damages for a turn
Mm-hmm.
after you've teleported into danger, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like the running theme. I like the way they kind of sprinkle a little bit of spice on each one to make them a little bit unique.
Mm-hmm. But yes, that is the spring ones. As I said, they all have the bonus action, which is the Phase Step. Recharge on a 4 or 6, so there's a 1 in 3 chance you're going to recharge it. I do quite like the idea of just recharging it anyway, because it's not the end of the world to be able to teleport 30 feet, to be honest. Maybe just don't overdo it. I think in an average fight, just let them do it twice or something to be kind of even with it. Um, the next season,
Yeah,
obviously, is Summer. As I said, Summer is the one with the variation on its presence. So it has what's called fearsome presence. So in this one, they essentially are able to. They have an aura that much we didn't really explain the joyful presence, but it is an aura that they emit that has an
Yeah.
effect. And in this case, rather than charming an individual who has to make obviously a save, this one frightens them.
Uh, nice big aura as well. 60 feet. Is it? Are
Hmm.
they all 60 feet?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe
they
so.
are, aren't they? That's
Um,
a big aura.
the Summer Eladrin are obviously associated with summer, and they are the sort of aggressive warrior ones that are very angry and full of wrath, and what's it referred to as? A burning tempestuous state is what this says.
Yeah.
But they are, yes, they're supposed to be the full of fury. Um, and these are, I think these are one of the ones that have, yes, they have their reaction. Not
The
all of them have a
parry.
reaction. It's always good to have a reaction, and these guys get parry, which is if you know monsters, if you're experienced in reading monster stat blocks, you'll have seen parry before. Essentially, is something that increases your AC as a reaction. Um, it's unlike the previous one; it has no magic to speak of. I would still be tempted to give it a little something just to flavor it out, but there's no reason to. I think the reason it's not got any magic is probably because of that reaction. Not quite what I would
Yeah.
call an even exchange. Um,
Well, yeah.
this one also doesn't come with your um, psychic resistance.
No, it's got fire this time.
It has fire instead, which makes sense when you are an angry fire elf.
I like that they went with the kind of raging sun rather
Hmm.
than like a warm sun of summer happy vibe because they kind of would have then doubled up a little bit
Hmm.
from spring.
Yeah.
Um, I like that.
Next we'll go with autumn. So the autumn fellows are all about feelings of goodwill. These are the peaceful, calm autumn or fall for our American friends vibes. Um, they are all about peace as per their reaction, which they have a reaction which is foster peace. So if a creature is charmed by them, um, if a creature, wait, I'll read it out for. If a creature charmed by the Eladrin hits with an attack roll, well, within 60 feet, sorry, of the Eladrin magically causes the attack to miss, provided the Eladrin can see the attacker. So basically, it's kind of like saying you attack somebody, their peaceful nature allows them to prevent that from hitting, or at least attempt to. Um, they have the face step. That's not different. They have their presence. This is the enchanting presence. Again, it's a charm one. So it allows basically them to charm those in their presence in 60 feet. And these do come with some spells. In fact, these come with a few, despite having the reaction, these actually come with a few more
Oh,
spells
wow,
than
yeah.
the spring ones. So they get at will hold person, which is a pretty decent spell. Um, there's
Fits the peaceful vibes.
it fits a
Like,
peaceful thing, um, especially if it only has to deal with humanoids, not so bad. It also gets twice a day. It can do cure wounds and less restoration. Definitely fits in theme. And then once a day, it gets greater restoration and our spell of the week from last week, Revivify.
mm.
Um, Anything to add on that, Rob?
Interesting question, I suppose. Revivify on a creature.
Hmm.
Obviously, typically you don't give if you're in a fight against said creatures. When players kill creatures,
Hmm.
whether it's bandits, whether it's dragons, you don't really do death saves.
You don't. It's not technically even a hard and fast rule. I believe it's either the DM's guide or the player's handbook. It pretty much says it's up to you.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone do death saves on creatures. Not to say that I'm sure it hasn't happened.
I'm trying to think. I feel
And
like I've done it myself, not given death saves, but had them unconscious rather than like
yeah,
bleeding out, opposed to being dead.
I've
Um,
had that. I've had that, but I've only ever done it when, let's be honest, the players have started a fight that they shouldn't have done. There's an NPC that they've maybe downed that they really don't want to
mm,
down. So I'm giving them a chance to
Yeah.
kind of right the wrong.
Yes. Yes.
If they don't do, if they don't want to do it, then again, consequences for them. But
Yeah. I typically
that's the
treat it
only
like
time I've really done that.
I typically treat it like that. If it's an NPC that shouldn't, that you probably don't want to be down,
Mm.
because they're of some sort of importance.
My next
Um,
question was going to be, would you make them cost a diamond? But I think that that is really taken.
it doesn't require
By,
material components as per the
I was just going to
spellcasting
say
abilities.
it's. Oh, does it not?
No,
Okay, fair
yeah,
enough.
but under spellcasting, it says the Eladrin casts one of the following
Oh yeah.
spells requiring no material components.
I was about to say the fact that it can only do it once a day anyway is enough of a restriction. So I was going to say I probably wouldn't have worried about the diamond regardless. That's probably why they've got the restrictions of one a day.
Yes, I
But
would
yeah,
think so.
I do
But yeah, because
agree.
they got with Monsters of the Multiverse, they took away spell slots essentially from all their spellcasting monsters or spellcasting creatures. And I imagine that was probably a little bit of the balancing compromise. We'll move on to the next one, which is actually one that I have used. I've prepared to use Spring before, but I've never actually used it, and that was in the bank heist that we've discussed in the last episode as well.
Uh, was
Um,
it another vault
it was
or was
it
it?
was another vault, yes.
Fair
Um,
enough.
I don't even know if you went in that vault. I think you looked inside, didn't see anything, and it may have just like not gone in.
Is this the
Um,
one that you said had references to Oberon and
yeah, I think
Titania?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But you didn't do anything, so it didn't get
I
it.
remember going in it and being like, the item we want is not in here. Let's leave.
Mhm. Yeah, I used the Spring Eladrin, but that would have been the Spring Eladrin from Mordecai's Tower Foes, and I think it had. Because I remember having it being visible. Now I could have just given it invisibility, but I got a feeling it may have had invisibility
Ah,
anyway. Um, the next is Winter Eladrin. These are your emos. These are your depressed individuals, your sorrowful individuals, full of melancholy. I've
I'm
used
kind of
these
like,
because they were perfect for when we did our in-person session to accompany the Prince of Frost, being that they are Winter Aladdin and typically found in his court. Um, these guys again have a presence. It's called Sorrowful Presence. Rob knows about rolling against that because he certainly did. Um, and they also have a reaction. So we learned that the only one that doesn't have a reaction is the Spring fellas.
yeah.
Um, but this guy has a reaction which I also added, I think, to the Prince of Frost himself as well, which is Frigid Rebuke, which is a variation on Hellish Rebuke. It's basically Hellish Rebuke, but it's cold damage.
Mm,
They get their phase step, and they have some spells. No, they're not quite the selection. Well, I guess you could argue the selection, but there's no restriction on their spells with like once a day, twice a day stuff that we've
of
seen
course, yeah.
previously.
These are all just at will.
They're all at will, and that is Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, and Sleet Storm. My theory on why it's all at will is because none of those are offensive spells. None of them do damage. They can be used certainly to cause damage, but they do not directly have a dice roll that results in that number being redacted, reduced from your from your hit points. Because Fog Cloud just creates a cloud, Gust of Wind blows things in the wind, and Sleet Storm obscures an area with Sleet Storm, which we covered. That last week's one as well, Sleet Storm.
Sleet Storm, no, Sleet Storm was a couple of weeks ago.
Week
I
before
think.
that.
I think I did it as a result of that in-person session because I
Same.
was like, yeah, I forgot that spell existed, and I remember liking it.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely over the last year grown to value obscuring vision because
Yes.
the more I learned about the rules, the more I understood that they're actually quite powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Um, and I really, because sometimes I can feel that a battlefield, if you want to call it that, an encounters battlefield, can if it's situational, so you're like, oh, they've created a fight, or we go into a fight here. Sometimes the location could just in itself not offer a lot of variety, a lot of it's not exciting. And introducing one of these spells, especially if you give it to a monster or a creature or whatever that you're controlling as a dungeon master, um, it can just bring that variety, can bring that excitement, that danger that you haven't been able to bring, for example, in a punk club like you guys are in, um,
Yeah,
which is just a flat, short, but you were all small, but um,
it's difficult sometimes to really get round the because I mean I've made some what I think are quite interesting maps, and then when it gets down to the fight, it still kind of becomes just a flat plane
mm,
that you're fighting on. So yeah, I think that's definitely probably a podcast special where we don't even do spell of the week and monster of the week, and we actually just literally talk about building really good battle maps.
mhm,
But I tell you one thing I've just noticed because I've got them all loaded up now,
mhm.
all these different Eladrin. I know why the summer one doesn't have any spells.
S-
It gets more damage dice.
You know, I actually didn't look at that. I looked at all their different features to see what was different. I didn't look at the damage dice.
Mm.
Um,
Well, they all have
yeah,
slightly different stat lines,
but
so they all have slightly different
yeah,
modifiers. But the summer one gets 2d8 for its longbow and for its longsword,
mm,
or 2d10 for its longsword if you're two-in-handing it. And also pluses 2d8 fire damage. Do the other ones add any
yeah,
extra
yeah.
damage?
So psychic damage for your spring
Mm.
fellas, which I
Oh,
assume is the
well,
same for your autumn as well, because they're
yeah.
also psychic ones.
They had a lot of psychic damage actually.
Five
Uh,
d8.
with no save. Okay, maybe I'm talking rubbish then, because that seems like it actually averages out a little bit more now. The cold ones add a little bit less, 3d8 cold damage,
Mm-hmm.
and only 1d8. So I suppose it really, yeah, they are actually their attacks are actually all kind of different apart from the autumn and spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. I think I'll see the reason that a lot of time that these
Oh,
things,
what psychic damage!
I definitely feel like if I was playing with these characters on the board, the some Eladrin do kind of feel a little weaker. Even if they're getting you said like what an extra damage dice for their main weapon.
Yeah, I just not realised that there was additional elemental
The
damage on
the,
any
the,
of
the
them.
elemental damage is not the best. It's actually the weakest, I think.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. Yeah,
which for me makes me feel weak. But what is because it's all based on challenge rating. So
yeah,
Wizards love their challenge rating, Wizards of the Coast, that is. And if you introduce something that increases your defense, that shifts the challenge rating. And
yeah. Fair.
that'll be what it is. It will to try and work that out. And I just say it, as we've said before, I think we've said it many times. Challenge rating, I just don't think is very practical. It doesn't work in reality. The
Yeah,
really only thing you can kind of rely on is the experience, in a weird way. So if you're new, it's probably a good shout. If you don't want to play pre-written games, then because pre-written games also come with the monsters, and they should be fairly balanced anyway. And they might give you some do give you tips on like if there's you only got so many players in your party, then you only use this. Um,
yeah.
but and you'll learn a lot of doing that sort of thing. So it is recommended you do start with sort of pre-written. But if you're not, yes, rely on challenge rating to begin with, and you'll learn. You'll learn pretty quick. Like I saw a meme on Instagram, I think the other day, which was the whole like about balancing an encounter, and it was the meme. I think it's a American, is it American Dad, where it's got like the bar that's got the green to red sort of
Oh, yeah.
across it, and it's got like easy, medium, like hard, very hard, deadly, and it's just got the little arrow up between the red and the dark orange, as if that's trying to balance. And I was like, yeah, you want to be deadly. To be fair, I make all my fights deadly, but only if it's challenge rating, it's deadly, but only like I don't want it too far into the deadly.
Fair.
But
I'll be honest,
that's
never
so
used challenge rating.
I only started using it because of D&D Beyond has an encounter builder,
Yeah,
and you can use it as a foundation. So what I'll do is I'll go, this is what I want, and if I get up to deadly, and over by just a little bit, I think, all right, that's what I want to start, and then what do I want to change, and what do I want to do? What's going to make it different, or whether it be more difficult or easier?
it's a hard line to balance. Like I had a fair challenge last night balancing an encounter because my Curse of Strahd guys got to the bone grinder.
Mm.
Um,
Were
I
they
don't
in
care
the
about
were they
spoilers
in the bone
anymore.
grinder, or was it?
When I sent you that image, they just got there, but they did the fight. We finished the session as the fight finished. and they went up against all three night hags. Um, I went harder on them than I did you guys because I didn't use some of the spells that the night hags have at their disposal when they're a coven. But this time it was actually quite interesting. I'm going on a tangent, but
Sorry.
the ranger spoke to the raven that was squawking on the front door because
Hmm.
there's a raven that tries to warn you away, but all it does is look agitated. And she's like, "Oh, I want to ask that. What's up?" And I was like,
Okay.
"That's fucking amazing. All right, make a charisma check to see if you can chill it out enough to get anything out of it." And she did well, and she asked like, "What's up?" And I kind of eventually managed to get out of it that they were hags, that there were children inside, and said, and like, don't eat the pies and that sort of stuff. As soon as the barbarian heard that kids were in danger, he just sprinted towards the door. So everybody was like, "All right, shit, follow the barbarian." As he booted the door in, because they'd already spoken to Morgantha because the rogue tried to sneak up, but she rolled really well on her perception while he was working his way around the
Hmm.
lighthouse. So she came out, spoke to him. He did bad on his charisma roll.
Lighthouse.
Um, it is how it goes. So she went back in, knowing full well that she was probably going to get attacked. So she was just waiting at the back of that lower level. And as soon as that door got kicked in, she just went lightning bolt
Oh,
against level 3 players.
jeez.
They all just nearly died. It was a good fight. It was a
Yeah.
very, very,
I enjoyed when
very
we
tough fight.
we did it because we ended up freaking yeah, we ended up kicking him into the fireplace,
Yes.
or at least not me. I was a wizard. Don't do no kicking. But
That was
those who could kick doth kick.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was a very good fight with you guys. It was very fun.
mm,
But I was balancing the encounter. I'm trying to kind of make it a little bit harder this time when if I'm running Curse of Strahd. But even then I still nerfed the encounter. I took away their resistances, um, and it's one of those things when there's high level spells available.
mm,
Um, you with and like any kind of creatures like these, if you were a player you kind of take as soon as you're in a fight, if you've got like very damaging spells like a wizard with lightning bolt or
mm,
something like that, you're going to use it and you're going to
yeah.
want to do as much damage as you can in a shorter time period as possible. But as a DM, you're like, right, I want to get this fight balanced enough so that the
Mm,
players can have a good shot at succeeding, but that's not guaranteed.
yes.
Um, that it lasts a good amount of time, but not too long and not too short. So when I opened with lightning bolt, I was like, right, we're going to be doing some more control spells now. We're going to dial it down because Hag's actual melee attacks are not that great.
No,
So
I'm not built for it.
it's a good chance to kind of like pace the fight out. But we do go on a tangent, so apologies.
It's okay. Um, because we've pretty much covered Eladrin. I don't think there's much else to add. Just that they are. It's interesting because it's you obviously with your dragons and stuff, you get different types of dragon, right?
Yeah,
But they are different dragons.
yeah,
This is essentially any one Eladrin can be all of these at different points during its life. So it's a different phase of its life, I suppose. If you really wanted to play it that way, well, you could have them. They're born spring Eladrin, and at the end, before they die, they're winter
mm,
Eladrin. If you really wanted to, flavor it, do it however you want. I quite like the idea of them being more. Um,
fluid.
actually, no, I actually prefer it the other way, where they're less so. At least in my
Um,
current Stormway world, I more view it that they tend to have like a preferred one that they're in. Because you do
yes,
find
yeah,
that
that
people
makes
have a
sense.
certain like personality that might be more akin to something, like sorrow or joy. You get more joy for people, more sorrowful people, and I think just having them stick with one kind of works in for me anyway. Um, at least within the current campaign we're doing, I definitely feel that if it was for example, in our former campaign of Nuri, they'd change depending on their mood.
Yeah,
Um,
the magic was a bit more chaotic in Nuri, wasn't it?
yeah, to some degree, it was mostly just because we had a player who was playing an Eladrin,
Oh, well, fair enough.
and I wanted that to be more of a thing. If you would ever got involved, we never did the story that involved it, so it was never a thing. But it was something I considered for
Mm.
future stuff.
Wow.
But we will move on from that, and we will move on to Spell of the Week with Rob.
Spell of the week. I've chosen this spell because I've only ever seen it cast once, and it was actually very effective. But I think the way that the spell is written, it puts a lot of people off it. And I've chosen the spell Confusion. It's a concentration spell, so it's an ongoing effect that you would have to maintain. Lasts a minute. And it basically does what it says on the tin. It causes confusion amongst multiple creatures within a 10-foot radius sphere. So a 20-foot diameter circle if you're on a gridded map. And each creature in that must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. So far, standard enchantment spell. Wisdom save, need to succeed or be affected by it. It doesn't actually say charmed, so it works against things that are immune to charm, which I think is a nice touch because that is sometimes the problem with enchantment spells. And it also doesn't have an intelligence like restriction. So some of them also say doesn't affect something if it has intelligence 3 or lower, or intelligence 4 or lower, or so forth and so on. Those restrictions are typically more affected when there's psychic damage involved, but not always.
Yeah.
So the affected target cannot take reactions and must roll a d10 at the start of each of its turns to determine its behavior for the turn. So I think this is sometimes where it puts players off a little bit because there is a chart. And I think sometimes that just makes people go, I'll just go for damage. And I can understand. I've been that player. The creature uses all of its movement in a random direction to determine the direction, roll a d8 and assign directions to each dice or die face. The creature doesn't take an action this turn, and that's if you roll a 1. So if you roll a 1, that creature is just going to run in a straight line in one of 8 directions. Nice. just disabling a creature, basically.
Yeah.
2 to 6. The creature doesn't move or take actions this turn. So again, so far, you've got a 6 in 10 chance of the creature doing nothing or moving. Just moving or doing nothing. Like, that's great. 7 to 8. The creature uses its action to make a melee attack against a randomly determined creature within its reach. If there is no creature within its reach, the creature does nothing this turn. So again, if you keep your distance from some of the creatures you confuse, there's an 8 out of 10 chance that they're doing nothing, which is pretty good. And then 9 to 10, the creature can act and move normally. Now, what I would do as a DM is I would allow the players to roll this dice because it's their spell. And sometimes if you're playing with behind a board, you don't want to generate player versus DM animosity. Let the players have fun with it. Go with the dice rolls. I would, as a DM, sometimes maybe be tempted to fudge it, but only if I started rolling a load of 9s and 10s and it felt like the spell was a bit useless. Depending on the fight, depending on the challenge of the fight, and depending on what it's affected. But I actually do think it's a really fun spell. At the end of its turns, the affected target can make a wisdom saving throw. If it succeeds, this effect ends for that target. And that's another thing that might put players off. However, if you are a rules lawyer, it is worthwhile reading an affected target can make a wisdom saving throw. So if you're that guy, and I wouldn't always recommend being that guy, but if your DM forgets to make the save and they go, oh, I forgot to make the save for that creature, I'll make it now. You can say, nah, can make it.
Don't be that guy.
Not must.
Don't be
Yeah,
that
maybe
guy.
don't be that guy. But it is a wording thing.
It is a wording thing. It is a wording
If
thing.
you are playing a character that's a bit of a snooty prick of a wizard, then maybe be that guy. I don't know.
But I don't know. Yeah, you're not a snooty prick. The character is. I'm not fond of that. But I know what you mean. Yes, it's
Yeah.
the wording. It should be the
You'll
target
do it.
should
You'll do it once, and
will.
the DM will not forget after that. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, and may punish you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a decent
It's a good
enough
spell.
spell. I think It's a concentration spell, so
Yeah.
everybody's always very wary of any concentration spells. Because if you're gonna have concentration spells, you're only gonna have a couple because you know that that's a slot of something that
Yeah.
you're going to be using. And there are some that are preferred over this. Off the top of my head, I'm looking at who can use it. So a bard has a
Yeah.
lot of charmy spells, so maybe that would be the thing.
Yeah.
Druids
Yeah.
have lots of concentration spells, so I can
Oh,
completely
loads.
understand why they wouldn't want to take confusion. Sorcerer is not. Don't have many. Same with wizards. It's not like and
Wizards
then
have them if they want them because wizards have that many bloody spells.
exactly. And you've got a couple others which are like your Oathbreaker Paladin and your Knowledge Domain clerics. We'll ignore those, but go for the the actual ones of the full classes. But yeah, the real one there is I think the first two, Bard and the Druid, are going to be the ones who are less likely to take it compared to your Sorcerer and your Wizards because they have more freedom with their choices.
Mm.
It was funny because I was thinking I don't recall it being used. Um, you mentioned that before the podcast that Chris had used it in our games. I assume when he was
Yes.
Duncan, um,
Yeah.
and I don't recall.
It was
But
one of your first fights
mm,
as Tor.
all right,
There was a lot of I think it was ghouls and wights. You killed quite a lot of them
mm,
because you were a light cleric.
yes,
Um, but it was the one where you were all on your horses and Stephen's horse got absolutely murked.
okay, okay, yeah,
Well, I should say Woody's horse got absolutely
hmm
murked. And Chris cast confusion on all the ones that had gone around that horse.
hmm
And then you and I think Irina did quite a lot of work
mm.
on the rest of them. And in fact, it might actually have been the fight where they met you. Um, is that the fight where they met you? Because you were in the ruins fighting some
I
undead.
was in the ruins fighting someone dead, but that that fight lasted like a round. I don't think it was that one.
No, maybe it wasn't then. It must have been a different one.
The horses one. Well, I
Um,
remember the horses one. Yeah, because is it not Stephen who got his horse killed?
yes, he was at the front of the pack and tried to run right past everything. Um, and they just surrounded him,
Yeah,
and I rolled to see if they'd go for him or the horse, and it was
yeah.
only him on the horse as well because everybody else was doubling up because there were 5 people, 3 horses,
hmm
um, and I rolled, and they all just went for the horse, and it was
It's meat.
gruesome. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it was neat. And then Chris saved the day or Duncan, I should say, saved the day by confusing about 4 or 5
yeah.
undead creatures.
But I was thinking, I'm sure there's a monster that does something very similar, and I was like, I'm sure it's a gibbering mouther. And I looked it up, and I
Absolutely.
was like, it does. The gibbering mouther basically has a very similar sort of thing that it does, which is pretty. It has a like an aura that it produces that confuses, and then you have to roll on a dice to see what happens on your turn because of this gibbering aura. Perhaps I'll cover gibbering mouther at some point. Um, but I was just like, I'm sure there's something that I've seen and even I have technically used. It didn't last very long, but I have used it. Um, that I was just like, I know there's something. I've seen this before. Like even if I've never chosen this spell myself. Um, I was like, I've seen it. I've seen something very much like this where you have to roll to decide what direction you go. And I think I may have
Yeah.
used it in some form of homebrew style thing before, and that I can definitely not remember. Um,
I would definitely say it's a good spell. I can see why it gets overlooked
mhm,
because you get a lot of kind of video game mentality with spellcasters of
mhm,
going, why we know why Fireball is it's so popular. It's just a massive chunk of damage in
mhm.
one turn. I get it.
For multiple
Uh,
enemies potentially.
multiple enemy. Yeah, if you're using it on a single enemy, that you're doing it wrong unless there's only one enemy to fight, and it's still probably your most damaging spell. So I get that. And you're looking at 4th level, so you're looking at spells like if you are single target, you're looking
Mm,
at Blight. things like that. Which blight is 8d8, which is a huge amount of damage. But I also think it's just a good spell just to cover for DMs.
Mm,
I'd be interested in making it quite an annoying spellcaster bad guy that uses it, or perhaps some arch wizard that has died and left a treasure trove tower full of traps.
mhm.
Perhaps the players are quite high up, not high enough for the fall to be fatal, but high enough that if there's a chest on a walkway and it sets confusion off on the players, they
Run
might,
off the edge.
yeah, they might run off the edge, have a chance to at least.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
could use it in all kinds of ways.
Yeah. I
I think
think
it's a good spell for a DM to use.
I feel like it's one that if I was playing a character whose flavor really suited the spell,
Yeah.
often like bards or enchantment wizards, stuff like that, I would, yes, I would, I think I would use it. Um, I like to put restrictions on myself and choose spells that I feel more fit the character rather than um necessarily are the damage dealers or the best spell.
Yeah.
Unless the spell really, really does suck. We haven't covered many spells that aren't good, but um,
They do exist.
they do exist. Uh, but that, ladies and gentlefolks, is confusion. Um, take it or don't is kind of my opinion on it. If you feel like there is something that is more suitable to take, depending on your perspective and how you build your characters, don't choose it. If you are looking for something that can potentially be quite fun, go for it. Um, and obviously, if you have players that are a bunch of dickheads who are going to take advantage of the wording of a spell, or even those who you don't trust their dice rolls, um, then maybe not as well. Or maybe do it and teach them a lesson. Um,
Yeah.
but we will move on from spell of the week, and we're going to go and we're going to cover something that I think both me and Rob are familiar with, something I think
Oh yeah.
all dungeon masters are familiar with. From a player perspective, I've never had it, so I can't really comment. But I've had it from a DM's perspective, being that I've DM'd a lot more than I've played, and that is basically how do you deal with burnout? That is what we'll call the topics. This section is how do you deal with burnout. Now, I guess we should start really giving a description on what burnout is, so that as you said, it's not we're not talking about the video game.
No, 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 no. Yeah, I mean, burnout. Again, it's one of those. The name is the hint, really. It's when you start to feel just kind of exhausted um, at the prospect of playing Dungeons and Dragons. Typically DMing it because it's a lot of work. Most players know how much work their DMs put into it, so most players are pretty understanding. But it just sometimes can really start to build up those exhaustion points. Let's use a D&D way of explaining it. It can become very hard to motivate yourself to carry on writing the whatever the
Yeah.
story, the adventure. It can become very difficult to motivate yourself to build encounters, and it's very dangerous as well because if you don't deal with it in the correct way, it can create toxicity in the group because the players will be able to tell that the DM's heart isn't in it anymore.
Hmm.
Um, very quickly, trust me on that. If you're trying to force it, um, love's like a fart. If you try to force it, it's probably shit anyway, and that fits for DMing as well.
It's
You
terrible.
know. No, seriously though, burnout is a game killer. So you need to do a lot to kind of make sure that that's not really going to happen, or when it is happening, you are doing things to really help
Yeah.
control it and cure it. Have you ever felt it really bad, Dan?
Really bad. I would never say I felt it. I I've never felt it really bad. No, I've had it. I would never go to the extent. And to be honest, like the most I felt it was at the end of Nuri.
Yeah,
Um, and it put it this way, like for me, I'll explain how my perspective on burnout anyway is. In my big perspective, it's essentially it's an emotional state that you get into when you it's a bit like stress. It's like overwork. It's
yeah,
um it's a sense, or sometimes it can be a combination of different emotions depending on the individual. So sometimes I just feel, for me, it'll get to a point where I just feel like I wanna just be able to enjoy it, D&D, without all the prep and all this other stuff thrown on top of it. Just be able to sit down and play. Now, I would imagine that I probably am a little more immune to it than others, being that I just really enjoy world building and writing and telling stories. That's my thing. So I can last a lot longer than most do. Um, but yes, by the time we got to the end of Nuri, that was where I was. I was like, I kind of feel like I want to play. I I have built this story up and I'm telling this story. It's coming to an end. I don't really have anything that I'm really getting a kick out of too much at the end. I've got the finale, the big battle, the whatever. In the case with the boss fight, and I was always it was a big potential that we are going to be blowing up half a freaking town. So like that was always this thing that I was waiting for. But a lot of you've
yeah.
done your reveal and it's kind of like that. How to put it? Um, I just sort of thought of a really of the sort of a post-nut clarity.
Yeah, it really can be like that as well, like because sometimes the climax isn't actually the end boss battle. It's
Mm,
like the narrative climax of finding out all like
hmm.
piecing together all the clues. So then your players are still
Oh,
engrossed
they still
because
got,
they
yeah. You very much can't wait. I remember playing like Strahd, and I was like, yes, the boss fight. This is the big thing. But by that point, we kind of knew everything that was going on.
yeah,
It's like the only twist was the twist at the very end. But yeah.
it's and I think it hit a little bit there in Strahd for me as well because
Mm,
like I was like, right, you guys have you've done all the well, you hadn't done everywhere.
no.
There were places you could go and explore if you really wanted, but they weren't going to really add anything for you guys. You'd have maybe got a few more magic items. You weren't going to level up anymore
Mm,
because you were at level 10, which is the max level for the campaign,
mm,
realistically. So unless the DM really wants to be kind and let the players get another level,
yeah.
but then you're going to have to rebalance the Strahd fight at the end, and yeah,
Mm. I just thought of a really, if you playing Baldur's Gate and you get halfway through the story and you're already level 12, you kind of get this feeling of why am I still going if I've already got
yeah,
to max level? It's kind of like that, to some perspectives.
yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I definitely started. I ended a lot stronger at level 12 than I started when I was level 12, if that makes sense. Because level 12 lasted a long time. I got a lot of like legendary level items and so forth and so on. But yeah, I definitely get what you mean. Um, I think one of the things that I would say is the best cure is it's like anything. People can get really burnt out from their jobs, whatever the job may be. Doesn't matter what it is. It just sometimes the fun is gone and it's exhausting and the motivation is just really not forthcoming. The cure is always just time off, time
Of
doing
course.
other things. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but
works.
communication is going to be super important.
I would say. Um, that was going to be my thing. Is like I feel that like I before Rob joined, I didn't have anybody that I discussed on the level that I
Yeah,
discussed D&D with Rob. I mean, able to just run through ideas with Rob or just like cover previous sessions, and he can give me feedback, and that feedback can keep you going a lot. It can feed the monster. Um, yeah, I think being talking to players or people who are in the same boat can help a lot. But that isn't if you're really burnt out, take a break.
yeah.
That's the big thing there, I think. And if you burn out really quickly, I would argue that being a DM isn't for you, and that's okay,
Or at
by
the
the way.
very least, Yeah, oh yeah, that's absolutely okay. If you burn out really quickly, maybe don't do homebrew. That's the first thing I
Yes.
would say because I never got burnout with Curse of Strahd until right at the very end, where I
Mm,
was like, all right, they just need to go fight Strahd, and I was like, oh, that's sad. It's coming to an end, and it
mm.
means I'm not going to have any more like
Yeah.
chances to just bully you with Strahd.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a difference between because that's not quite burnout. That's almost
No,
like
it's not. That was more like the
that's that
fun for me started to go.
that's like when you play a really good game or you're watching a really good TV show and then you finish all the episodes and you're like, oh, there's no more. Oh, they cancelled it,
Yeah,
or I've got to wait another year, or oh, it's the end, and you feel like, oh, I feel like depressed. I definitely do. Well, at the end of if I've enjoyed a show or something, I'm like, oh, I wish there was more. That's
yeah,
kind of it, and yeah, that can contribute to burnout.
yeah.
It's slightly different.
It's not quite the same, and that's why I said it was like nowhere near as bad. Like when I did my
Mm,
homebrew campaign, I had to really do DM it in like three big chapters, um, because there was I just hit a point where and the first time I didn't realize I was burnt out,
mm,
and I literally just stopped prepping. And as I just at the end of the session, I was like, sorry to spring this on you guys. I've just realized I don't really feel like I can continue right now. I
mm,
need to go away and I need to consider where the campaign's going. I need to really think about what I'm writing. I need to kind of bring things back to home a little bit for
mhm.
myself. Luckily, we already had kind of a bit of a leapfrog system in that group anyway.
Yes.
We're not in that group now. We've got three of us that are, I would say, comfortable and competent DMs. A couple of the other guys have tried a little bit here and there.
Mm,
Some realised they didn't have anywhere near enough free time, and the homebrew kind of stalled a little bit, unfortunately. Um, Others just haven't really given it a shot.
mhm.
Um,
Some people just don't feel like it's for them. That's fine.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't
I
have to
think
be, but I think go on.
leapfrogging's a good idea because obviously you kind of had a little bit of that when we did Curse of Strahd
Yeah,
because there were the times where we had a few breaks here or there where I would do a one or two shot. So you had that little bit of a break, but yeah, people can always that's always a good alternative if you do have someone else in your group that is a DM and you want to. Um, for me, leapfrogging it doesn't quite work in my head because for me, I get when I like to get going. I
yeah,
can't pausing for a couple of weeks to there or however long to go into someone else. I might lose that sort of energy that I have for that story
yeah,
that we're telling. Um, so yeah, it wouldn't it can be done if it's like breaks. I prefer just like the idea of breaks every so often.
yeah.
Um,
With my first homebrew campaign,
mhm,
the breaks were like a year long because I DM'd for like a year solidly
yeah.
homebrew, and that's obviously you know yourself. That's a difficult job. So I hit that wall, and I hit it really hard the first
Mm,
time. Luckily, Ross was able to take over with his campaign. Was it his campaign that took over? Yes, I believe it was. And then I came back and we DM'd. I didn't leave the group. I just became a player for a while.
yeah.
I came back to the role of DM for a while when Ross kind of hit that point again. Um, and then it was like me and Ross had communicated quite well. I was like, give me a heads up when you're starting to waver,
Hmm.
or if you just feel like you like the story is probably going to last maybe I don't know another month or two.
Hmm.
Um, I will be prepping anyway, but then it's nice to know when you've got a deadline to be ready, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, yeah. But
And
just any sort of restrictions sometimes can increase productivity. Yeah.
yeah, that old deadline is always a good kick up the ass.
Yes.
Um, and then we just kind of continued again, and I won't say I hit the wall faster, but I kind of felt like at that point the campaign started to lose focus a little bit after about 4 or 5, maybe 6 months.
Hmm.
So I was like, right, guys, let me just kind of focus it back in again. Um, and we were also ready for some of the other players to kind of give DMing a go as well.
Hmm.
So we did a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then I was like, right, let me now. And then I kind of started DMing again halfway through our Nuri campaign. Um, Maybe not halfway, maybe a third in or something like
Mhm.
that. And I remember, and then that third kind of chapter was really just like I'd actually made a conscious decision to end the campaign. So it was about kind of bringing the players to that point. And I think that was the first time where I'd ever actually thought about the campaign itself having an end.
Mhm.
I hadn't just thought, let's just kind of see where the story goes. I
Mhm.
was like, no, there is going to be a climax. We're going to build to it now.
Mhm.
I'm going to really start bringing in like my themes really in.
Mhm.
Um, there was some sadness because I'd planned a few things out in other areas of like the kind of the world that I'd built that were never experienced.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the players still had a really good time. I still had a really good time.
But the important things.
Um, that whole system was that I kind of invented for my world. I really enjoyed.
Mhm.
Um, I've
Yeah.
t- I've talked about it before, where restricting yourself too much can also cause difficulties, and I think that added to my burnout a lot because I
Yeah.
my first campaign was in a desert world.
Yes.
There was a core theme of the baddies being UNT and orcs, so it started to get a bit challenging.
Mhm. Mhm.
But but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
we
the
dealt with it.
again, there are many, I suppose there are many causes to it, to burnout. So your individual cause could possibly affect the solution, though I would always argue the solution probably communication and rest, basically, as it is to stress and like, yes, we're British, we love to moan, but sometimes you just need to air grievances. 'Cause somebody might not understand or might have them, or maybe someone has a solution. Um, to your grievance, which isn't always why you air a grievance. Um,
No.
but I would definitely think of myself as more solution orientated, so it works for me. Um, but I also have the issue that, and this is evident in pretty much every project I ever start, in that I'm very easily influenced by other sources of inspiration, shall we call it.
Yeah.
So for me, like I'll get really into this one idea, and I'll start building a campaign or an adventure about on those themes of that idea. And it's been inspired by multiple different things, but I'm very much, oh, this is really cool. And then as I'm doing that, I'll start watching a new TV show, playing a new video game, watch another movie or something. Um, and all of a sudden, like that is, I'm just like, oh, that's really cool. Or, oh, I could do, if I was doing it, I'd do it a different way. And go, maybe if I did it in D&D, I could do it a different way. And
Yeah.
that's now taking that energy away from me, and that's now become more exciting to me than what I was already working on.
Yeah.
So I need focus. Like, like when I uh, the book that I wrote that was based on the world of Nuri, the only one that I've ever fully completed. Um, that was I watched very little of anything during that period. Everything I was doing was kind of trying to avoid inspiration.
Yeah.
I don't think I was playing games at the time, and I was just proper focusing on that. So that I wasn't allowing too many distractions. I think if I was watching something, it was generally like it wasn't fiction essentially, so it wasn't storytelling in the same
Oh yeah.
regard.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, whereas like now we're doing Stormare, like a lot of like for example, Stormare's influences are Pratchett, as I said before, Pratchett, a little bit of Studio Ghibli, and then things like Penny Dreadful, and a lot of obviously Victorian themed stuff, um, and Dishonored, the video game,
Oh yeah. Big time.
and then many other many things, um, but they come from many sources, and if I, and but when I originally had the idea. I think the original when I was some of the idea I had back in the day, it might have been when there's an Amazon TV show called Carnival Row. That is this apparently I haven't watched the second season. It's supposed to be rubbish. The first season isn't
Oh
good,
yeah.
isn't great anyway, but it had potential, and it's got that Victorian setting with a fantasy vibe. And I was like, yeah, I reckon I could do this. If I did this in D&D, I could do this better. I could make this
It's
bring
like,
this alive.
isn't it like Penny Dreadful slash Ripper Street, but with Fae?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's the one with Cara Delevingne or
Cara
whatever her name
Delevingne,
is.
Orlando Bloom, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
but it's always things like that for me. It's like, oh, I think this, but I could do it better. Um, Maybe I don't do it better, but in my head, I feel like I can do it better for my subjective position, I suppose. Um,
yeah,
but because of those like inspirations and these other things coming in, that can lead me to get easily distracted or worn out quicker because I'm like, oh, I'm not in love with this idea anymore.
yeah. That
Um,
definitely really became a catalyst for me being frustrated with the restrictions of the themes that I'd
mm,
imposed on myself. So, like, obviously, desert campaign,
mm,
snake people, and orcs, and I'd like maybe undead as well were thrown in there, and then
mm,
I'd be like, I'd see some random TikTok about like an NPC that someone had designed that was a raccoon that played tricks on the party and in some sort of deep forest, and I'm like, I want to do a deep forest. I
mm,
want to have some green in my campaign, even if it's just something like that. And then there's
mm.
always, I want to do cyberpunk.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I had a like when what was it? They released I think when they originally released Cyberpunk and then when they did Phantom Liberty, that was what I wanted to do. Luckily, I've
Yeah,
managed to not allow it to overwhelm me, and I think of these ideas separately and think about, oh, I could do it later. I mean, if I want to do it, I could do it later. I don't have to wait. I'll focus on the one I'm doing now. Um, but luckily, well, we've only been playing a few months, haven't we, in the Stormy
yeah,
campaign, and so far I don't have burnout. I have things I want to change and improve, but we are kind of experimenting with this campaign. So there are things I want to improve and change and grow, but that kind of keeps me interested as well because
yeah,
those things are engaging me. Um, so if you can in your own games find that, if you can find ways to engage yourself to make it more interesting to you again, even if like it's going back to like those media influences or those influences and watching them again, like I remember one of the big resparks for me in my head, at least. Also, it's been years since it came out and I watched it, but was the TV show Arcane based on League of Legends.
of
Um,
course, yeah.
that inspired me to start rethinking about Stormere again, and a big part of my just continued thought on that Stormere has been for the last few years because it was kicked off again by that show. Um,
I can't watch that without wanting to make some sort of monk or bare knuckle fighter because I always just love the way that they animated the combat
mm,
for. I don't even know, is it Vi or V? Is that
yeah,
how you
Vi,
say her name? Vi.
Vi, yeah,
Yeah, I just love the way they animated that show. I mean, the aesthetics were
oh yeah,
groundbreaking.
very sure. Yeah, great inspiration for well, it's based on a video game and so much in common because it's a game and we play D&D and D&D is a game. There's a lot of crossover between the two. Um, Great inspiration. I mean, everything's everything can kind of inspire. Sometimes again, just go to those inspirations and maybe it'll kick something off in your head again. Even like if you have to force yourself to go to that inspiration, maybe it's already dead. Um, and you just have to admit it to yourself and to your group.
Perhaps, yeah, that can be the healthier thing as well. Like, just honesty.
Yeah, like you said, how you had to be honest with your group. Um, but I hope we were helpful to anybody who is having burnout. I know the solutions don't sound appealing when you just want to play D&D and someone's telling you to stop playing D&D or stop DMing D&D. But perhaps try playing D&D rather than DMing it. Which DMing is playing D. Everyone's playing D&D together. Try a different
Yes.
role. Try something
Or
new.
maybe one final bit of advice, because that 4 week orc campaign you did was really fun, and it was a nice welcome change, even
Mhm,
for players as well. I would say that was, knowing that it was a short little thing gave us the freedom to also try weird stuff or try different stuff or
mhm.
just get like really involved in something for 4 weeks,
Yeah,
and then so try that too. That worked
yeah,
for me really well, and I think it worked for you really well, didn't it?
I did. I did. Fond memories. But we will call it an end to this episode of the Awkwardly Big Dice podcast, number 18. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe, hit that like button, and of course, hit that little bell notification to get notifications for the future. That sounded weird. Little bell icon to get notifications for the future. Future
Ring the bell,
episodes. Ring the bell.
and the bell will ring.
So yes, thank you for watching. I've been Dan. This has been Rob.
Hello.
We are awkwardly big dice. We will see you next week for another episode. And in the meantime, I hope all your D20s roll 20s. See you next time.
Have a good one.